All right, Photoshop artists, we are here today because we are going to be talking about the finishing filters. Finishing filters are one of the very last things that you typically do. This video is going to be very short, so let's get moving. We're going to go to File, Open. We're going to navigate back to the Art folder. So you're going to Courses, Art, okay, Courses, Art, the yearbook lesson files, and you guessed it, you want the file called Finishing Filters. Now there's three main finishing filters that we will use in this class. That's the sharpening filters, soften, and reduce noise. And you will use them based on what the subject or the intent of the photo is. So sharpen, what that does is it just kind of crisps up your edges. It makes things pop a little bit more. It's going to make your edges a little bit more clearly defined. You will use that on things like landscapes. You might use it on still lifes. You might use it on portraits. Especially if maybe they're just slightly blurry, you can do that. The other is the softening blur filter. So we use what's called surface blur, and you would typically only use this on portraiture, and this one's a little bit more challenging, and I'll show you why in a little bit. And then the last one that you probably will not use very often is a filter called the reduced noise filter, and what that does is it deletes the speckling called noise that's created from having your ISO on your camera set a little too high. So you may need to use this later, especially when we get to experimenting with our shutter speed. All right, so once you've opened this, let's go to File, Save As. We're going to save it on the computer. We're going to save this in your folder. So you're going back to your folder, yearbook. Oops, wrong one. Habit, edits, and we're just going to call it Finishing Filters, and we're going to click Save. All right, so we're going to just run through this. We're going to apply these three filters so that you can kind of see how they work all on the same document. We're going to grab our rectangle marquee tool that's in this drawer up here. I want you to double, triple check, make sure you do not have a feather on this. And then we're just going to click and drag. We're going to start in this upper left-hand corner. We're going to drag a marquee down to that bottom right. And we're going to release our mouse. It's okay if you go a little bit outside the margins, perfectly fine. And then all of these filters are going to be up under here, up at the top under the filter section. So you're just going to go to filter, and we're sharpening this. So it's in this drawer with sharpening, but here's the weird thing. I want you to go to unsharp mask rather than a simple sharpen, because it's going to give us a little bit more control. We're going to click on that, and then this dialog box should pop up. Now you can zoom in and out here. I like to zoom kind of in a little tight so I can see the edges. You need to double check, make sure preview is selected. So it's going to show you what it looks like, and it's also going to do it in real time here in the image. So you can kind of see before, after I see that in my image. So the main control that you will be moving is the amount. You really won't move the other two. You can always play around with it, but you don't want to go crazy, because if you go crazy, it's going to be really, really artificial, unless that's the look you're going for. If you're doing something experimental, maybe. But typically when you are sharpening, you're really sharpening usually less than 10%, okay? You're just crisping that up. And again, you can see before, after, how much it's crisping up, especially that background. You can see it's crisping up the edges, and you're just going to click OK. All right, we're going to jump and we're going to do the reduce noise one next. So still make sure that this marquee tool is selected, because we're just going to click and drag, and we're going to drag that selection over to reduce noise. But before we apply the filter, I want you to zoom in really tight on her face. It's kind of hard to tell, but there is a subtle speckling on her face, and we're going to use the reduce noise to correct that. So you're going to go to Filter, Noise, Reduce Noise, and it's kind of like a blurring filter. Again, you can, I'm going to resize this so we can see a little bit better. You can set your preview on and off. It's just going to do a real subtle blurring of her face, and it will get rid of some of the pixels that are in there. So the pixel will show up as slightly different colors. How much you increase it is up to you. Now you might not see all the colors because of my recording, but there's more speckles here, and it's just smoothing it out. And then you click OK. And that's that. It's as simple as it is. Last thing we're going to do, we're going to move that marquee over. So that was reduce noise, kind of simple. We're going to move it over to our granny here. And before we apply this filter, we're going to open up our layers panel. This is really important, and it's only for the surface blur when you're doing portraits, and you'll see why. So we're going to make a copy of Granny here, but I want it to be on its own layer. So we can do the long way where we can have it selected and go to edit, copy, edit, paste, or we can be lazy about it and just hit Control J on your keyboard. So what it's done is it's just made a copy, okay? And we're going to do the blurring to this copy. Before we do that, I want to zoom in a little bit on her face. We're going to apply the surface blur here. So on layer 1, I want you to go up to Filter, Blur, Surface Blur. And notice my surface blur is cranked. Okay, 6 pixels is really wide. I've rarely gone above like 2 or 3. So you're just softening, and you can see it. It gets rid of some of the pixelation in there. In fact, it had some noise. This image also had noise, but the surface blur will take care of that. So if you didn't know, if you have your phone on, your camera phone set to selfie mode, so you have it reversed, it's going to assume that you are applying or you're taking a picture of a portrait of your own face. So it's automatically applying the surface blur. That's why you look better in the selfie mode when your camera's reversed than if somebody's taking a picture from the front. I'm actually going to do, you can do increments. I'm going to do 1.5. I feel like I kind of want it in between. I don't want quite 2. Oops, it's not going to let me do 1.5. I forgot. 2 is a little much for me, but I'm going to go with 2 because I don't think 1 is quite enough. I'm double checking. Actually, 1's not too bad. Let's just go to 1 and we're going to click OK. Now here's why we do this on a different layer, because we don't actually want to blur the eyes. We want the eyes to be crisp. So what we're going to do is we're just going to grab the eraser tool. This one in the drawer works just like a brush. I'm going to use my bracket keys to increase the size, and I just want to erase through on the eyes. So notice it crisps them back up. You do need to make sure you're on that layer 1. You might want to double check, because what we're doing is we're literally erasing through the eyes, and then I would also do it on the tip of the nose and maybe the mouth. So that what we're actually doing is this. It looks a little weird, but because it's stacked, you can't tell. So the rest of the face is kind of softened and blurred, and our features, the eyes, nose, and mouth, are nice and crisp. All right? So before we finish, let's go to File, Save As. Save on your computer. We've already saved it once, but we're going to save it as a Photoshop document, Finishing Filters. We're going to click Save. Click OK to this. And then you guessed it, we need to export this. So File, Export, Export As. Exporting as a JPEG. We're going right back. We're just going to call it Finishing Filters, leave it as is. And it's going to save over the first save that we did. And we want to hit yes. All right, that's it. Make sure in Google Classroom you submit this, and congrats, you are done with every single one of the photo edits videos. You are ready to rock and roll in Photoshop and make edits as often as you want to.